You begin in the valley of a city nestled among green mountains that rise like protective arms. The year is 1949, and a boy named Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria has just been born. The streets are narrow, the houses simple, and chickens scratch in the dirt while children chase each other between laundry lines. You walk past a local school where chalk squeaks faintly against blackboards and glimpse a young boy who listens more than he speaks, eyes darting with restless curiosity. His father tills the land, his mother teaches in classrooms, and together they raise 7 children in a modest household. Yet even in this small, busy home, ambition stirs. Pablo does not only want enough, he wants more. The well-known fact is that Escobar would one day become the richest criminal in history, at one point rumored to be earning millions each day. But right now, you are not yet in that empire. You are in a neighborhood where nickels are counted and meals are stretched thin. It is here that he first learns to dream of escape. The streets of whisper with opportunity, some legal, many not. Young Pablo notices the older boys who ride shiny motorbikes, paid for by shady errands and quick deals. He watches the way neighbors respect wealth, no matter how it is earned, and you sense his early lesson. Money buys dignity, power, and even love. Historians still argue whether Escobar's hunger was born from poverty itself or from an unshakable belief that he deserved more than ordinary life could give him. You follow him down to the river where he skips stones, already imagining how far he might travel. He listens to radio broadcasts about politicians and generals, and though still a child, he tucks away names and stories as if each were a brick for his future. He doesn't shine in school the way his mother hopes, preferring mischief to memorization. One quirky tidbit says he once declared to friends that he would grow rich enough to build his own city of marble. At the time they laughed, but there is something about him, something steady, calculating, almost watchful. You notice the way he calculates favors and debts even among children, trading marbles, candy or comic books with an eye toward profit. He is not cruel, not yet, but he understands the weight of leverage. In the evenings, the family gathers for simple meals of beans and arepas, the chatter of siblings filling the room. You catch the warmth of his mother's voice, the grounding presence of his father's hands worn from farm work, and in that mix of care and struggle, you see the dual roots of Pablo's life, love and hunger, belonging and desire. The of the 1950s and 60s grows quickly, factories humming, buses crammed, city blocks stretching outward into hillsides where tin roofs glitter in the sun. You walk through these crowded neighborhoods, noting the divide between those who have and those who yearn. Pablo sees it too, and rather than accept his place, he begins to plan, step by step, how he might climb higher. There's a rhythm to the city, with salsa music floating from open windows, soccer games erupting in cheers, and the ever-present rumble of motorcycles. Among these sounds, you feel the heartbeat of a boy who refuses to settle. He studies the streets like textbooks, memorizing shortcuts, faces, and unspoken rules. His friends talk about becoming teachers, drivers, or shopkeepers. He talks about becoming a millionaire. No one yet imagines the scale of what he will do, the power he will command, or the fear his name will one day inspire. But as you walk beside him through S-plazas, where pigeons flutter and vendors shout, you sense that restless energy already pushing against invisible walls. The city is his classroom, the people his teachers, and the lesson he absorbs again and again is this: in fortune favors the bold. And Pablo is learning how to be bolder than anyone else. You follow Pablo into his teenage years, when curiosity becomes hustle and idle dreaming sharpens into action. The streets are buzz with vendors, bicycles, and the faint smoke of frying empanadas. Amid this rhythm, young Escobar begins testing boundaries. He is not the boy who fades into the background. He is the one who sees an opening and steps through it, no matter the rules. The well-known fact is that Escobar's first ventures were not yet in cocaine but in small-time hustling. You see him cutting school to wander markets where goods change hands quickly. Cigarettes, radios, even car parts. Anything with a profit margin tempts him. He starts by selling stolen tombstones, smoothing away names and reselling them to unsuspecting funeral homes. It sounds almost absurd, but to Pablo it is clever business. You imagine him at night, crouched by moonlight with tools in hand, chiseling away at someone's name. It's not cruelty that drives him, but opportunity. Historians still argue whether this was his own idea or whether he borrowed it from older delinquents he admired. Either way, the pattern becomes clear. He learns that anything can be transformed into cash, if one is daring enough. A quirky tidbit whispers through local lore. Escobar once bet his friends that he would become president of Colombia. To them, this was as laughable as saying he'd owned the moon. Yet you can almost see the smirk on his lips, the way he tucks the boast away like a promise to himself. He moves on to forging diplomas and selling them to students who want quicker paths to jobs. He is no printer or scholar, but he knows people, knows how to exploit desires and fears. You walk with him into a dimly lit shop where ink smells sharp and stacks of paper pile high. The counterfeit documents are crude, yet buyers line up, each one grateful to escape the slow grind of honest work. Step by step, Pablo learns 3 things. Risk can be managed, corruption can be bought, and people will pay anything to climb faster. These lessons are seeds that later bloom into something far larger. The late 1960s is restless. The country struggles with inequality, and young men crave symbols of power. A motorbike is one such symbol, sleek and loud, slicing through traffic with enviable freedom. Pablo saves, schemes, and finally buys his own. You hear the engine roar beneath him as he speeds down crowded streets, wind tugging at his shirt. For him, the motorbike is more than transport. It is a declaration. He is mobile, he is visible, and he is untouchable, at least in his own mind. You notice the confidence he wears like armor. He dresses sharply when he can, favors leather jackets, and keeps his hair neat. In a world where image matters, he builds his carefully. He is not content to be ordinary. He wants to stand out, to command attention. Around him, the world of contraband grows. Cigarette smuggling across borders becomes a quick path to money, and Pablo dives in. The trucks creak with boxes, the drivers wink knowingly, and at checkpoints, envelopes slip quietly into the hands of police officers. Corruption is not a secret. It is the air everyone breathes, and Escobar inhales deeply. One evening, you picture him leaning against his motorbike, pockets heavy with pesos from a day's work. He lights a cigarette, not because he likes the taste, but because it looks powerful. He flicks ash to the ground and glances around at others his age. Many will labor endlessly for small wages. He already feels different, set apart by the risks he is willing to take. Yet there are limits. Police crackdowns grow harsher, and rivals compete. Pablo learns caution, keeping his circle tight and rewarding loyalty fiercely. He also learns violence, quiet, casual, almost businesslike. If someone cheats him, the consequences are swift. Historians still debate whether his first murder was over a stolen load of cigarettes or a dispute with a fellow smuggler. But either way, the line is crossed. And once crossed, it never really fades. The nights are stretched long, with cantinas glowing and music pulsing into the hills. Pablo spends his earnings freely, buying drinks for friends, impressing women, and slipping gifts to his mother, who worries but cannot quite deny her pride. You imagine the flicker of her lamp as she grades schoolwork, her son returning home late, smelling of gasoline and ambition. Even now, the contradictions define him. He is generous and ruthless, playful and cold. To some, he is the loyal friend who never forgets a favor. To others, he is the unpredictable youth whose gaze lingers too long, calculating. The city does not notice him yet, not really. To most, he is just another young man on a motorbike, one of thousands chasing a future. But as you follow his footsteps through shadowed alleys and noisy plazas, you sense the growing rhythm of something larger. Pablo Escobar is no longer just hustling. He is rehearsing for an empire. You find yourself following Pablo as the 1970s open wide, a decade of expansion where petty crimes evolved into something far bolder. The sun overglints on corrugated rooftops, buses roar down steep streets, and in the shadows of markets, whispers travel fast. Contraband remains the heartbeat of his work, but now you watch as the scale shifts. Cigarettes and fake papers are no longer enough. The stakes rise, and so does Pablo's appetite. The well-known fact is that Escobar began smuggling marijuana before cocaine became his calling card. Colombia's northern coast, with its hidden coves and swaying palms, offered endless routes for boats loaded with green bales. You picture him walking the docks, the salty air clinging to his clothes, as workers slide packages aboard fishing vessels bound for the Caribbean and beyond. The profits are sweet, but the real opportunity lies elsewhere, waiting. Historians still argue whether Escobar's entry into cocaine was by accident or design. Some say he was merely following a market trend. Others claim he was an early visionary who saw its global potential. Whatever the truth, the shift is undeniable. You watch as local chemists experiment in jungle labs, boiling and filtering coca leaves into crystalline powder. The product is light, potent, and endlessly profitable. Unlike bulky marijuana shipments, a suitcase of cocaine could finance a fortune. A quirky tidbit surfaces here. Escobar allegedly tested the strength of shipments by rubbing powder on his gums, joking about the numbness as though it were a badge of quality. To him, the drug was less about personal indulgence and more about business mathematics. 1 kilo becomes 10, 10 becomes hundreds, and each one brings wealth that boggles the imagination. Smuggling evolves into a science. You ride with him as pilots rev the engines of small planes under cover of night, wings trembling before they lift off jungle runways. The planes skim across treetops, lights off, carrying cocaine toward Miami, where eager hands wait to receive it. You feel the adrenaline of risk, radar to dodge, storms to navigate, police to bribe. But the rewards eclipse the fear, and cash begins to flow like a river. Bars are fuller, cars flashier, and Escobar's reputation grows. People whisper of a young man who seems untouchable, always one step ahead. He buys land, cattle, and houses, weaving money into assets that expand his influence. And with each purchase he rises further from the dusty beginnings of his childhood. Yet the business is not just about shipments and sales. It is about people, pilots, guards, and forces, accountants, all of whom look to Pablo for leadership. You sense his natural ability to organize, to inspire loyalty, to reward generously while punishing betrayal swiftly. The pattern emerges. His empire is not only built on cocaine but on trust and fear balanced carefully. One evening, you walk with him through a newly acquired ranch. The land stretches wide, cows graze lazily, and beyond the hills, he imagines airstrips and warehouses. He is already designing a kingdom disguised as farmland. It is a strange, almost comical duality, rural tranquility masking a criminal machine. Itself changes with this new trade. Wealth flows in, but so does violence. Rivals fight over routes, and police units strain to contain the spread. Yet Escobar thrives amid the chaos. Adapting to every shift, he bribes officers with envelopes fat enough to ensure silence, and when bribes fail, threats follow. Historians still debate whether Escobar at this stage fully understood how massive his empire would become, or if he was simply chasing each new deal. But standing beside him, watching his eyes scan maps and his fingers tap nervously against stacks of pesos, you sense that he already sees further than most. He is not just smuggling, he is building. A memory surfaces of his boastful childhood dream. To build a city of marble. Now, in a way, he is closer than ever. Not marble yet, but concrete foundations for something vast. The city around him watches carefully. Neighbors notice his generosity. School supplies for children, gifts for families, dinners paid for without hesitation. Too many, he becomes a symbol of possibility, proof that a poor boy can rise to heights unimagined. Others whisper of the violence that trails him, the bodies that vanish into shallow graves. You walk through at dusk, neon signs flickering, salsa beats echoing in plazas, and you feel the tension between admiration and fear. People cross themselves as they mention his name, unsure whether to praise him or curse him. And at the center of it all is Pablo, straddling two worlds. The humble beginnings he cannot quite leave behind, and the empire of cocaine that will soon make him infamous. His eyes fix on the horizon, where small hustles fade and global dominance begins. You now walk with Pablo as the 1970s tip toward the 1980s, when ambition hardens into empire. The air is thick with diesel fumes, roasted corn drifting from street stalls, and the ever-present hum of motorcycles. Yet behind these ordinary sounds, another rhythm builds, the pulse of a cartel forming, each beat louder, more dangerous. The well-known fact is that Pablo Escobar became one of the richest men alive, his cartel at one point controlling as much as 80% of the cocaine entering the United States. You picture warehouses stacked with bales, the smell of gasoline and chemicals, the constant buzz of generators powering labs hidden in jungle clearings. But how does a small-time smuggler become a kingpin? You watch him weave the answer piece by piece. Planes are purchased, not just one, but fleets of small aircraft, each stripped for maximum cargo. Pilots are paid fortunes, but their lives hang on precision and luck. You imagine the late-night takeoffs, black skies swallowing the hum of engines, and the relief when wheels touch down safely on hidden runways. Historians still argue whether Escobar was the true architect of this network, or whether he simply rose higher than others who laid its foundation. Some credit Carlos Leda, the eccentric smuggler who carved out Norman's Cay in the Bahamas as a cocaine hub. Others insist Pablo was the one who stitched it together, expanding routes, securing loyalties, and turning smuggling into an industry. Either way, you witness the growth firsthand. Money pours in so quickly it cannot be counted. Cash is packed into barrels, buried in fields, walled into houses. A quirky tidbit tells how Escobar allegedly lost millions each year to rats chewing through hidden stashes of cash. Yet the loss was so trivial compared to his profits that he barely noticed. His influence deepens. He buys entire neighborhoods, providing houses for the poor, earning gratitude that shields him from suspicion. Mothers bless his name, children run barefoot through homes he financed, and to them he is not a criminal but a benefactor. The contradiction is almost dreamlike. The same man who floods foreign cities with narcotics also lifts his neighbors from poverty. You walk into his estate, hacienda, a surreal playground of wealth. White fences stretch across acres of land, and within them roam exotic animals. Zebras, giraffes, even hippos, shipped from Africa. Guests laugh as they stroll past dinosaur statues in a private bull ring. A small boy climbs onto a pony while nearby a plane. The very first Escobar used to smuggle cocaine is mounted proudly at the entrance like a monument. It is excess beyond reason, yet for Pablo, it is proof of victory. He has rewritten the script of his childhood poverty, replacing dust and hunger with opulence and spectacle. And as you walk past fountains spraying into the hot air, you feel the unsettling charm of it all. But the empire is not built on charm alone. Loyalty is purchased with gifts, but betrayal is punished with precision. Rivals disappear, debts are collected, and those who threaten his network learn quickly that mercy is rare. The cartel forms a coalition of smugglers under Escobar's magnetic leadership. Their influence spreads from jungle to city, from Colombia to Miami, touching every layer of society. By night, meetings unfold in dimly lit rooms where maps stretch across tables, red lines tracing smuggling corridors, guns lean against chairs, briefcases brim with contracts and cash, and Pablo sits at the center. Yet commanding. His voice is steady, his orders clear, his gaze sharp enough to silence dissent. Still, he maintains the dual image. Ruthless boss and generous patron. You watch him arrive at a soccer field, handing out uniforms to children who cheer his name. He smiles warmly, yet in the back of his car, armed guards sit ready. The balance of fear and admiration is delicate, and he manages it with instinctive skill. Historians still debate how much of his generosity was sincere and how much was strategy. Was he truly touched by the poverty he once knew, or was each gift a calculated step to secure loyalty? The answer may be both, tangled beyond separation. At this stage, Pablo is more than a smuggler. He is a symbol of wealth, rebellion, and possibility. The government takes notice. The world begins to whisper, and you sense the turning point approaching. For now, though in the glow of nightlife, with music spilling from bars, and the river glinting under streetlights, Escobar's empire hums like a well-oiled machine. And at the heart of it all, he grows bolder, convinced that no wall is too high, no law too firm, no rival too dangerous. The boy from dusty streets is transformed into the architect of a shadow kingdom, and his empire stretches farther each day. AAO stepped past the gates of Hacienda once more. But this time you notice not only the grandeur of Pablo's estate, but the fortress-like vigilance surrounding it. Guards patrol the grounds, rifles slung casually, eyes always scanning. The empire is flourishing, but with it comes paranoia. And yet, inside the walls, there is another version of Pablo, the husband, the father, the man who tries to shape a sanctuary for those he loves most. The well-known fact is that Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao when she was still a teenager. You imagine the quiet ceremony, the whispers among relatives who thought she was too young, and the certainty in Pablo's eyes as he claimed her as his partner. They would have 2 children. Sebastian and Manuela, who grew up surrounded by both unimaginable luxury and constant danger. You walk through the halls of the mansion where children's laughter bounces against marble floors. Manuela rides a tricycle across the polished tiles, her curls bouncing, while tinkers with toy cars in a sunlit courtyard. To them, their father is not a feared kingpin but a protective giant who tells bedtime stories and promises safety. A quirky tidbit lingers in family lore. On one particularly cold night, while hiding from authorities, Escobar allegedly burned stacks of cash, millions of dollars, just to keep his daughter warm. Whether entirely true or embellished, it captures the strange reality of a man who would treat money as fuel for comfort, while others risked everything to chase even a fraction of his fortune. Historians still argue how much of Escobar's domestic life was genuine tenderness, and how much was carefully staged to maintain control over his family's loyalty. Was he truly the doting father he appeared to be, or was he simply ensuring that those closest to him never questioned his path? The truth, as always, sits in the gray between extremes. Outside the household, Hacienda becomes a private universe. Guests mingle by the swimming pool, exotic animals graze nearby, and helicopter blades thrum as allies arrive. You see Escobar moving easily among them, shifting roles with uncanny fluidity. Affectionate father in one moment, calculating boss the next. His mother Hermelda often visits, carrying with her both pride and worry. She sees her son adored by neighbors, feared by rivals, and pursued by authorities, yet she clings to the belief that he remains, at heart, the boy she raised. You can almost hear her chiding him gently, even as she benefits from the wealth his empire generates. But within the fortress walls, safety is never absolute. You notice the bodyguards stationed outside children's bedrooms, the armored cars waiting at every exit, the radios buzzing with constant updates. Escobar, for all his power, knows too well how fragile everything can be. Rivals circle, governments tighten their grip, and betrayal always lurks close. Still, family moments pierce through the tension. You imagine long Sunday lunches, grilled meats laid out on wide tables, laughter mixing with the hum of cicadas. Pablo carves meat for his guests, pours wine generously, and for a while the world outside feels distant. He tells jokes, recalls village stories, and revels in the company of those he trusts most. Yet even here, shadows creep in. A sudden phone call interrupts the meal, a whispered message in his ear, a flash of irritation on his face. The empire intrudes, reminding him that he cannot ever fully retreat. His children may play freely on sprawling lawns, but Pablo himself is never free, bound to a machine he created. Historians still debate whether Escobar's love for his family ultimately made him more vulnerable, anchoring him in ways that enemies could exploit. What is clear, though, is that within the chaos of his empire, these private roles gave him purpose, perhaps even justification. In his mind, every risk taken, every life lost, every deal struck could be excused as a means of protecting those he cherished. And so, as you walk through the sprawling estate at dusk, the sun painting the sky with shades of rose and gold, you sense the strange duality of his existence. Inside the fortress, warmth, laughter, intimacy. Outside the walls, violence, strategy, and the ever-expanding empire. Pablo Escobar, the father and husband, smiles gently at his daughter as she falls asleep. Yet the same Pablo, beyond the bedroom door, is already plotting his next move in a game that spans continents. You now step into the corridors of Colombian politics, where the marble floors gleam, voices echo in grand halls, and a man dares to walk among suits and senators. Pablo has already built a fortune, but wealth alone does not satisfy him. Respect, legitimacy, even immortality, these are the prizes he seeks now. And politics, with its polished smiles and promises, offers a stage for his transformation. The well-known fact is that Escobar was elected to the Colombian Congress in 1982 as an alternate member of the Chamber of Representatives. You imagine the scene, cameras flashing, men in crisp ties shaking his hand, and Pablo dressed neatly, his posture straight, as though he belongs completely. To the poor of his rise is vindication, proof that one of their own can ascend into the halls of power. But you already know the contradictions beneath the surface. Historians still argue whether Escobar truly believed in political change, or if his congressional seat was simply another shield for his empire. Some say he dreamed of a future where narco wealth blended seamlessly with national leadership. Others insist it was pure strategy, giving him immunity, influence, and access. A quirky tidbit tells of how Escobar campaigned by handing out money in envelopes and building entire housing projects for the poor. He financed soccer fields, schools, and clinics, and in return, he harvested devotion. In neighborhoods where the government was absent, Pablo became the government. Mothers prayed for him, children sang his praises, and murals bloomed with his image. To many, he was not a criminal but a Robin Hood who delivered dignity where the state had failed. You walk through one of these neighborhoods, rows of houses freshly painted, women sweeping porches, children kicking soccer balls on new turf. Residents smile when they speak his name, their gratitude genuine. For them, Escobar is the man who gave them shelter, not the man who flooded foreign cities with drugs. Inside Congress, though the reception is colder, established politicians whisper behind his back, calling him a gangster in disguise. Rumors swirl of his past crimes, his connections, his shadowy fortune. The tension builds until it explodes in a single moment. A fellow politician exposes his criminal ties publicly, stripping away the thin veil of legitimacy. You see Pablo's smile tighten, his eyes narrow. For a man who built an empire on fear and loyalty, public humiliation is intolerable. The clash between Escobar and the political elite escalates. You can almost hear the thud of newspapers landing on breakfast tables, headlines naming him a narco, a threat. The government begins to stir with renewed determination, while Escobar, bruised but not broken, retreats into his fortress of influence. He cannot be a congressman anymore, but he can still be a king in the streets. And so, he doubles down on his public image. He funds more housing projects, hands out food in barrios, pays for hospital bills, and organizes lavish events for the poor. Each act deepens the myth. He is a paradox, both outlaw and savior, both predator and protector. You watch him walk through a crowded barrio, children tugging at his sleeves, mothers pressing forward to thank him, men cheering his name. Bodyguards hover nearby, their weapons hidden but ready. The atmosphere is electric, almost religious. People see him as hope itself, even as the government brands him the enemy of the nation. Historians still debate whether Escobar's fall from politics was inevitable or if, with more caution, he might have blended into the elite. Perhaps he could have avoided exposure, climbed higher, and reshaped Colombia from within. Or perhaps the violence that pulsed through his empire was always destined to break through the surface. As night falls over, you sense the duality sharpening. In his mansion, Pablo kisses his daughter goodnight and smiles at his wife across the dinner table. In the city, murals of his face glow in candlelight, offerings of flowers placed below, and in government buildings, men plot how to dismantle the empire he has built. The politician in Pablo has stumbled, but the legend only grows stronger, and with rejection by the state comes a dangerous new resolve. If he cannot join the system, he will bend it to his will, or break it apart. You step into a darker chapter now, when wealth and image no longer shield Pablo from the fury of the state. The nights you walk through are no longer filled with only salsa music and the chatter of vendors. They are pierced with explosions, sirens, and the echo of gunfire bouncing against the valley walls. Pablo has crossed into open war. The well-known fact is that Escobar unleashed a campaign of violence in Colombia during the 1980s, targeting politicians, judges, journalists, and police. His empire thrived on fear, and now that fear became a weapon. You picture city blocks rattling as bombs detonate beneath cars, offices collapsing into dust, and people whispering his name in trembling voices. Historians still argue whether Escobar believed this war could truly force the government to its knees, or if it was simply his instinctive reaction to pressure. Some describe him as a strategist with a clear plan. Others insist he was lashing out, blinded by pride and paranoia. You stand with him as he declares his infamous war against extradition, the policy that threatened to send him and his allies to face trial in the United States. To Pablo, extradition is worse than death. In Colombia, he can bribe judges, charm communities, and sway politicians. In America, he would be just another prisoner. His vow becomes simple: better a grave in Colombia than a cell in the US, and so, the violence escalates. Police officers find themselves hunted, with bounties placed on their heads. You hear the whispers of young sicarios, teen assassins, who earn small fortunes for each badge they deliver. Entire generations of boys grow up in barrios where loyalty to Escobar means survival, and betrayal means death. A quirky tidbit emerges from this grim chapter. Escobar once offered to pay Colombia's national debt in full, billions of dollars, if the government would abolish extradition. Imagine the audacity, a criminal proposing to rescue the nation's economy in exchange for his safety. It never happened, of course, but the very idea captures the scale of his influence. As you walk through the city, feels divided. Some still adore him, grateful for the houses, schools, and soccer fields he funded. Others live in terror, unable to ignore the bodies left in streets, the funerals filling churches, the constant dread of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Journalists who dare to write against him are silenced. Politicians who speak his name too loudly are assassinated. Judges who take his cases are bombed. The government responds with military force, black-clad units storming safe houses, helicopters circling overhead, arrests sweeping through neighborhoods. And yet, Escobar remains elusive, shielded by loyalists and an endless flow of money. Historians still debate whether Pablo ever truly believed he could win this war. Some argue he thought sheer terror would bend the government, forcing concessions. Others see it as his fatal overreach, the moment he crossed from powerful criminal to national enemy. One evening, you stand beside him on a hillside overlooking city lights, glittering below like scattered jewels. He smokes quietly, his mind calculating. He knows that every car could carry a bomb, every phone call could be tapped, every ally could be a traitor. Yet he also knows that fear itself is his weapon, and the city beats to his rhythm. The war stretches beyond Colombia, too. In Miami, law enforcement scrambles to contain the flood of cocaine, while US agents work alongside Colombian forces to track him. International newspapers brand him the king of cocaine, his face staring from front pages, his name whispered across borders. And yet, in his own city, murals still bloom with his likeness. Children still cheer when he drives through, tossing money into crowds. He is both beloved and despised, savior and executioner, saint and monster. As dawn breaks over, smoke lingers above rooftops, and families sweep broken glass from their floors. Escobar's war has turned the city into a battlefield, and though his grip remains firm, the cost grows heavier each day. For every bomb planted, every rival silenced, another thread of his own security begins to fray. Pablo is powerful beyond imagination, yet the storm he commands is slowly circling back toward him. You move with him into a strange paradox, where Pablo Escobar, the world's most wanted man, tries to live as if he can still bend reality to his will. His war against the state has made him a hunted figure, yet he negotiates like a king. And so, in 1991, an arrangement is reached. To avoid extradition, he will surrender to Colombian authorities. The well-known fact is that Escobar turns himself in, but only on his own terms. He designs his own prison, a fortress-like compound in the hills outside which the world comes to know as La Catedral. You step into it with him, and it feels more like a luxury lodge than a place of punishment. Inside, there are bright rooms, large windows with sweeping views of the valley, a bar stocked with his favorite drinks, a soccer field where guards sometimes play against visiting friends, even a waterfall and jacuzzi. He selects his own guards, hires the cooks he wants, and entertains visitors at will. Prison becomes his kingdom, and for a time, he rules it with ease. A quirky tidbit drifts in La Catedral even had a designated escape hatch, a hidden exit leading out into the surrounding forest. Though he rarely used it, the very idea that his prison came with a back door shows the absurdity of the arrangement. Historians still argue whether the Colombian government accepted this deal because they were desperate to stop the violence or because they were intimidated into compromise. Some say the state believed any peace, even a crooked one, was better than war. Others suggest officials were cornered, forced to allow Escobar his palace prison because they could not control him otherwise. Life in La Catedral feels surreal. You walk with him through halls filled with laughter and music, business associates coming and going under the thin veil of visitation rights from behind bars. He continues to run operations, making phone calls, issuing orders, shifting the flow of cocaine northward as if nothing has changed. He watches soccer games on television, chuckles at soap operas, and shares evenings with his family, who visit without restriction. For his children, it feels less like visiting a prison and more like coming to a strange resort where their father still reigns. But beneath the comfort, tensions simmer. Rival cartel members whisper about his arrogance, politicians grumble about his unchecked freedom, and us authorities grow restless. Whispers begin to circulate about killings carried out within La Catedral's walls. Business partners who displease him are summoned, and some never leave. The prison becomes a stage not just for luxury, but for fear. You stand nearby one tense night when Escobar orders 2 of his former allies tortured and killed inside La Catedral itself. Their screams echo faintly through the valley before fading into silence. Word leaks out, and suddenly, the illusion crumbles. The Colombian government can no longer pretend this arrangement is acceptable. Historians still debate whether Escobar underestimated the state's resolve, or whether he simply could not help himself, too driven by pride to restrain his hand. Some claim he thought he would remain untouchable forever. Others believe he welcomed the confrontation, seeing it as inevitable. Pressure mounts, and soon soldiers surround La Catedral, not as guards but as an invading force. Escobar senses the danger and slips through his hidden escape route, vanishing into the forest. You follow him as he disappears into the night, his shadow blending with the trees, his empire once again in motion. La Catedral stands empty behind you, a monument to the audacity of a man who thought he could turn prison into paradise. For a moment, you feel the stillness of the place, the echo of laughter and footsteps on stone now abandoned. But outside, chaos reignites, braces once more for his return, and the city knows what this means. The bombs will fall again, the bullets will fly again, and the war will continue. Escobar is free, and his myth only grows larger. In the months that follow, you see him on the move constantly, slipping between safe houses, ducking through tunnels, appearing in neighborhoods only to vanish again. His face, once smiling from campaign posters, now fills wanted signs. His voice, once broadcast as promises to the poor, is now whispered in fear as families wonder whether he will bring peace or more bloodshed. And yet, despite everything, his charisma lingers. In barrios where he built homes, people still defend him, children still idolize him, drawing his face on walls, telling stories of his generosity. To them, he remains the man who gave them a future. To the state, he is the most dangerous criminal alive. One evening you picture him lying on a simple mattress in one of his hideouts, listening to the city outside. He is no longer in his palace prison, no longer surrounded by luxury. His breath is shallow, his eyes restless, the empire is cracking, and though he clings to his throne, the walls are closing in. You drift into the final chapter of his restless years, when Pablo Escobar lives like a shadow, hunted yet never entirely unseen. The government, once hesitant, now presses forward with relentless force, aided by international partners and enemies within his own world. The well-known fact is that after his escape from La Catedral, Escobar spends his last 18 months on the run, constantly shifting from one safe house to another. You follow him through narrow streets, ducking into ordinary houses where families shelter him, then slipping through tunnels and staircases that seem to sprout from the city itself. He trusts few people now, and even among those, betrayal feels close. Historians still argue whether Escobar's downfall was sealed more by state intelligence or by the betrayal of former allies. Some say it was the work of a specialized Colombian police unit known as the Search Block, trained and funded in part by the United States. Others point to Los Peps, a vigilante group made up of rivals and enemies who tracked him mercilessly and dismantled his support. The truth likely blends into the fog of conspiracy and rumor. A quirky tidbit surfaces in this bleak period. Despite his fugitive status, Escobar continued phoning his family regularly, sometimes as often as once a day. Those calls, though warm in tone, became his greatest weakness. Authorities traced them, narrowing the circle around him little by little until the net closed in. You walk beside him in these cramped apartments, hearing the hum of old refrigerators, the scratch of radio static, the muffled sound of helicopters circling above. He grows heavier, less careful, his once sharp instincts dulled by exhaustion. He paces rooms at night, unable to sleep, whispering that the end is near, yet still clinging to a sense of invincibility. Itself changes around him. The city is weary of violence. The poor neighborhoods still revere his generosity. Yet even there the funerals have grown to frequent, the danger to constant. Graffiti still paints him as a hero, but families pray quietly that his capture will bring peace. As you follow him into December of 1993, the pursuit sharpens. On December 2nd, his 34th birthday, Escobar makes a fateful mistake. He calls his family for too long, his voice drifting across phone lines just a bit further than safety allows. Colombian security forces, working with intelligence from the United States, triangulate his location to a modest house, and you stand with him that afternoon as he notices the unusual silence outside. Then the sudden crackle of radios, the sound of boots pounding the pavement. He runs to the rooftop, desperate, barefoot, clutching a pistol. The air is hot, the sun bright, the city below, alive with ordinary routines. Children playing, vendors shouting, while history unfolds above. The gunfire erupts, bullets rip across brick walls, the chase ending in moments. Escobar collapses on the rooftop, his empire crumbling with him. Some accounts say he was shot by the police. Others insist he took his own life, unwilling to be captured. Historians still argue over this detail, the final ambiguity of a man who lived in myth and rumor. Crowds swarmed the scene, neighbors peering from windows, journalists snapping photographs, soldiers standing guard. For years, Escobar had seemed untouchable, larger than life, yet here he lies, still and silent. The man who once offered to pay a nation's debt, who built neighborhoods and waged war, who lived like a king in his own prison, now rests on a humble rooftop, barefoot, defeated. That night buzzes with conflicting emotions. Some mourn him, their patron gone. Others celebrate, relieved that his reign of terror has ended. And many feel only exhaustion, weary from a war that consumed their lives for over a decade. You look back at him one last time, the echoes of his story lingering in every corner of the valley. The hills around, once shaken by bombs, now hold a quiet tension, as if waiting to see whether peace will truly follow. Escobar's end is not just a man's death, but the unraveling of a myth. He dies both loved and hated, remembered as a benefactor and a butcher, a man who could never be confined by walls, yet who could not outrun the weight of his own empire. You now step into the quiet aftermath, where Pablo Escobar exists only in memory, legend, and the whispers of those who lived through his era. Is scarred, yet slowly, life rebuilds. Streets once echoing with explosions now hum with everyday activity. Markets reopen, buses run again, and children play in parks he once funded, oblivious to the man who made both dreams and nightmares possible. The well-known fact is that Escobar left behind an immense fortune, much of it hidden or lost, and his name endures as a symbol of both unimaginable wealth and extreme violence. You see the ghost of his empire lingering in graffiti, in tales told by grandmothers to wide-eyed grandchildren, and in neighborhoods that still whisper about his generosity and ruthlessness alike. Historians still argue whether his influence changed Colombia permanently for better or worse. Some claim he indirectly improved infrastructure, gave a glimpse of power to the poor, and challenged political stagnation. Others argue that the violence, corruption, and fear he propagated left wounds that will linger for generations. The truth, like the hills of themselves, is layered and complex. A quirky tidbit floats through memory. His hippos, brought to Hacienda, escaped into rivers and now thrived in Colombia's wetlands, an unintended living legacy that reminds the country of his eccentricity. Even in death, Escobar's reach stretches beyond what anyone could have imagined. You walk through the city now, noting both the remnants of his presence and the ways life presses on. Houses built with his generosity still stand, a testament to his odd blend of philanthropy and ambition. Streets named after heroes he once admired sit next to murals celebrating the cultural icons of today. In quiet corners, you hear older citizens recount stories of his charm, his cunning, and the fear he could command with a whisper. Yet the ultimate lesson is of impermanence. Empires rise, legends grow, and names echo, but time softens even the loudest roar. In parks where children run, the memories of gunfire fade, replaced by laughter and chatter. In the valleys and hills, the forests grow dense again, reclaiming spaces once dominated by clandestine labs and secret airstrips, and you sense the strange duality of his legacy. A man who could inspire awe and terror, kindness and cruelty, wealth and ruin. He is remembered both for what he built and what he destroyed, a figure suspended between admiration and infamy. As night falls, the city lights glitter softly, wind rustling through palm fronds. The air carries both memory and renewal. You feel the calm of a life observed in its entirety. The rise, the chaos, the fall, and the slow pulse of time reclaiming all. Even as Pablo Escobar's story ends, its echoes persist, a reminder that human ambition, no matter how immense, is always entwined with consequence, and that even the most powerful are ultimately fragile. You settle into the quiet now, letting the pace slow almost to a whisper. The world of Pablo Escobar, once vibrant with motion and violence, fades like a sunset behind the hills of. You imagine the soft rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the river, and the way city lights shimmer gently against the night. In this calm, the story does not end with a bang but with a lingering exhale, a reflection on a life that burned intensely and unpredictably. Even the grandest empires are temporary. The wealth, the fame, the terror, they all dissipate with time. You picture the families he helped, the schools he built, and the hippos roaming freely in the wetlands. These remnants are quiet, living memories of a man whose presence once dominated entire landscapes. His generosity sits uneasily beside the chaos he caused, reminding you that human lives and actions are rarely simple. Walking through the empty streets in your mind, you sense moving forward. Children play where bombs once fell. Vendors call out their wares where fear once loomed. The city heals slowly, and the echoes of Escobar's empire are woven into the fabric of daily life, not as headlines of terror, but as history, absorbed and remembered. You feel a gentle reassurance in knowing that even the most powerful figures, the ones who seemed untouchable, cannot escape the passage of time. Life continues, quietly, persistently, reclaiming its rhythm. The mountains and rivers, the people and neighborhoods, all endure beyond individual ambition. In the hush of night, you allow yourself a final glance at his world. Luxury and violence, kindness and cruelty, ambition and fragility. All of it now rests in memory, in stories whispered, in lessons learned. And as you exhale, you realize that even the most intense human life, like Escobar's, is ultimately part of the larger, enduring tapestry of the world. The city breathes softly. The wind brushes against the palms. And somewhere, in the quiet, history settles into its place, leaving you with the serene understanding that life continues, gentle and unbroken.